Roysambu constituency by the Kenya Defence Forces. Mr. Speaker, first of all, let me start by appreciating the fact that this petition was tabled by yourself and it was brought to the attention of the House through your office. And also, Mr. Speaker, appreciating the fact that last week you exempted it from the normal procedures as per the standing orders and allowed it to be debated today. Mr. Speaker, in regard to this petition, we were able to invite several stakeholders, the petitioners, the AG, the CEO of National Land Commission, Chief Administration with the CAS, the PS Minister of Defense, CEO Chumi, Director Legal Services of KCB, and Director of Joel Complex. Mr. Speaker, there were so many areas that we established that the officers who are in charge have been faulting the procedures we are supposed to be followed to the latter. Mr. Speaker, on interrogating the petitioners, we invited the petitioners and they came in numbers. Mr. Speakers, they were elderly who were present and they gave us their stories. There were those hires of the ones who had passed on, who were the workers of Samuel's Jacob. And Mr. Speaker, as per what it has been raised by the chair, they had their prayers. And Mr. Speaker, on investigation or on interrogating the relevant departments who are in charge of this particular issue, we had a meeting with the CAS. Mr. Speaker, when the CAS came on that particular day, he presented 3 files. The files which are basically dealing with the same LR number, which is 5875. And that is the same land which is being claimed by the workers of Samuel Jacobs. Mr. Speaker, the 3 title deeds, the 3 files which were presented by the CAS, one of them was the original one, which was covering an acreage of 17.5, which was under the LR number 5875/2. The second one was the same land, but which had a different file number that was transferred to a company called Solio. And Mr. Speaker, what we noticed when we were interrogating the CAS is that the person who was in charge to transfer or to give an authority of transfer of this particular land on the second file that was brought to our table, Mr. Speaker, the authority or the person who was in charge denied and said that she did not sign on the authority for it to be transferred. Because looking at the transfer, before the transfer was done, and the registration of that company where the transfer was done, the registration of company was 2 months after. So meaning the transfer was done, and then the registration of the company was effected after 2 months, meaning there was a fraudulent activity that took place in the ministry. Mr. Speaker, the third file indicated that there was an amalgamation of one number 23393 of the land that belonged to Grace Independent Baptist Mission Trustee, which was used by the ministry official to register as an amalgamation with the said parcel. Mr. Speaker, these are activities which are going on in the ministry. And there is a lot that we are supposed to talk about, but Mr. Speaker, due to time, let me go to the conclusion. Mr. Speaker, moving forward, I think due to the activities which are going on in the ministry, there's a lot that is being done which is not done in accordance to the law and in accordance to the process. Mr. Speaker, the KDF is a government agency. KDF is a government agency which falls under the arm of government, but with the consideration of what we heard from the petitioners, Mr. Speaker, I think it is prudent enough for each one of us to follow the law. Mr. Speaker, in our conclusion, I think Madam Chair had already gone through it, and it is the way it is. Mr. Speaker, I second the report. Thank you.
Yes. Why don't you allow me, Honorable, for me to propose a question first? Assuming you are raising a point of order on what Honorable Mwashetani has said. So then it is on the floor. Honorable members, I will propose a question which is that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Lands on its consideration of a petition on the alleged invasion of LR 5875/2 in Luisabu constituency by the Kenya Defence Forces, read on the table of the House on Thursday, July 2nd, 2020. What is your point of order? Honorable Wadai.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, you know, we are living in difficult times, and even the time we take on these kind of motions has shortened, kind of. Mr. Speaker, you know, I've listened carefully very keenly to the comments by the chair and the vice chair while moving and seconding the motion of the report. But, Mr. Speaker, it would be perhaps advisable if we could guide so that the House gets to know, because the petition was very clear. The petition by the member for Roysambu was very clear. It was on an alleged invasion of a specific parcel of land by the Kenya Defence Forces.
You know, Honorable Wadai,
Mr. Speaker, just indulge me.
Yeah, but
yes.
be very careful that you will not be debating.
Yes.
The line is thin, but
yes,
what is out of order?
I don't want to debate now. I want to debate later.
Yes.
But I wanted just to ask you, perhaps if you could compel the chair and the vice chair to help the House understand what was their finding. Did they? No, I've listened very keenly and I've read the report.
Yeah, but
are they concluding that the KDF actually invaded that particular parcel of land?
Order, Honorable Wadai. You know, Honorable Wadai.
In no uncertain terms.
Order, Honorable Wadai.
Other than prevaricating.
Order,
going around in circles.
Order, Honorable Wadai.
Yes.
You know, Honorable Wadai, there is a bit of mischief on your point of order, because I can clearly tell you are gravitating towards actually contributing to this. Honorable Mwashetani, you will not get another chance, because it is the members, there is a report that is tabled in this House. It is expected every member should get and access and read the report. That is why it is here. Now, the members are at liberty to discuss it, depending on, you can raise your issues during the discussion, but the report is there. And Honorable Chair actually said there is a whole report, a detailed report. It will be, I'm sure, and it is assumed and presumed that the members have actually read it. Now, shall we start with the one on top here? I know Honorable Member for Roysambu is present, but Honorable Member for Roysambu, don't you want to hear 2 members? Then I'll give you a chance. Certainly, you'll get a chance. Yes. Okay, Honorable, let's start with the Honorable Member for Roysambu, who has been very patient. I can tell he was very, very patient here. Honorable Dirango Waihenya. I wanted to give 2 members then, but it is good you start. You have the floor. Honorable Waihenya.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Perhaps for the benefit of our chairman, Park, I would request him to read the recommendations of the report. And simply the recommendations of the report, Mr. Speaker, indicate that the Committee on Lands recommends that the former workers in this farm be issued with the title deeds, and all the public utilities in the property for building, schools, market also be issued with the title deeds. So, Mr. Speaker, briefly, the dispute involving LR 5875/2 revolves around, Mr. Speaker, Roysambu, or the royal suburbs, where Jewish settlers and soldiers of the Second World War, Mr. Speaker, were settled. In this particular case, Mr. Speaker, one Jacob Samuels had a farm, 17 acres around Roysabu. He was involved in the business of construction and sisal processing. But you know, Mr. Speaker, around the 70s, 80s, the sisal processing businesses went a bit low. So, Mr. Speaker, he was quite unstable and unable to pay workers. However, along the way he died. And when he died, his half-brothers came and inherited the parcel of land and continued with the same business and the same workers. However, they had a lot of arrears. So, Mr. Speaker, in 1986, the government, through the Ministry of Lands, sought to acquire by compulsory acquisition this parcel of land. But the owners, Mishumael Jacobson, refused the offer because the government was offering 3.5 million. He went to court, and the court awarded him 23 million. Mr. Speaker, it is recorded from all government departments that up to this day, he has never been paid. Even the deposit of 3.5 million that he is alleged to have been paid was paid to the court and never found his way to his bank account. However, Mr. Speaker, this guy also vanished. He was either deported or killed, we don't know. But the former workers continued staying put on the land, doing their businesses. So, Mr. Speaker, the lease for this land expired in 2003 when the workers were still on. And in 2010, the government, having refused to renew the lease for the former owner, the lease stayed expired, and in 2010, by virtue of the new constitution, the land vested in the Nairobi County. So these former employees, who are also called squatters, Mr. Speaker, went ahead to the county, and they were allocated the parcels of land, and the county of Nairobi earmarked some land for building public facilities, a school, a bus park, and a market. And they went ahead to issue letters of allotment for these facilities and also for the former employees. The former employees paid for these allotments, and they were given receipts. Mr. Speaker, when the KDF purported to have paid for this land, they also pretended to have taken occupation of it. But it is on record, Mr. Speaker, that they never took possession until last year, 2019, when they decided on the farm and evicted all the workers, all the former workers. So, Mr. Speaker, we are asking, who are the owners of this land? Mr. Speaker, a company called Solio purported to have acquired the parcel of land.
Honorable Waihenya, what is your point of order, Mr. Speaker? No, you're not Mr. Speaker. Honorable Murere. For now.
Speaker, yes, thank you. But is it in order for the Honorable Waihenya? He's giving a very good background information. But is it in order for him to purport that the KDF, Kenya Defense Forces, pretended? Is it possible for KDF to pretend?
Honorable Waihenya, there you are. Or seems to pretend. Honorable Waihenya, what is...
Mr. Speaker, according to the law of compulsory acquisition is never complete until full payment, prompt and in total, has been paid to the owners and all the other people with vested interests. That is what has never taken place. That is why we are saying, Mr. Speaker, that the KDF is only a crown being used by land grabbers to take away this parcel of land from from the requisite people who should be the beneficiaries. Mr. Speaker, I'm requesting this House to adopt this report so that we can get public utilities to build schools, to build markets, to build TVET, to build also a bus terminus, Mr. Speaker, and for the remaining squatters to benefit from this RAD. I know, Mr. Speaker, the company that has been claiming ownership to this RAD got an allotment 3 months before it was incorporated. And Mr. Speaker, in law, a non-entity, a company that does not exist, no RAD can be vested in it. Yes, Mr. Speaker.
You had 5 minutes, but because, especially because it's your constitution, I award you 1 minute.
Thank you.
Then you
So,
sum up.
Mr. Speaker, I'm simply requesting that members adopt this report so that our members can be issued with the title deeds. They can also be helped with the public utilities. And we have already obtained finances from World Bank to build a TVET, 200 million, Mr. Speaker. CDF has set aside 20 million to do a secondary school so that we have quick transition of our pupils. We also need a market and a bus park. You all know, everyone in this house knows, that Roysabu roundabout is highly congested and densely populated. And we need people to have a market so that we can get rid of this corona. I'm appealing to this House not to let KDF be used by grabbers to take away public RAD. Mr. Speaker, as much as I support KDF, it is wrong for them to be used by RAD grabbers to purport to take people's RAD, Mr. Speaker.
Very well, very well.
I support.
Very well, Honorable Ihenya. I gave Honorable Ihenya because the constituency is his, where the subject matter is. Now, I know I should give majority leader, but do you want me to jump to my left, then I give you Honorable majority leader? Let's Honorable Oruoch Tom. And then I...
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. As I rise to support the report by the Departmental Committee on Lands on the consideration of the former workers of the property and reference, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to highlight 3 salient points that are not in question. Mr. Speaker, could you protect me from the loud consultations?
Order, Honorable Mwadi.
Could we?
Order. Let Honorable Waihenya listen to what Honorable Tom is saying.
Honorable Waihenya, it's in your interest that you listen to my contributions. So as I support this Honorable Speaker, there are 3 salient points that are not in question. The first is that the owner of this property, who is Mr. M.J. Samel, had a lease of 99 years, which expired in 2003. That's a fact that is in the report. The second fact, Mr. Speaker, is that either by death or disappearance or abandonment, the owner of the suit property or the property left the property unoccupied, and therefore under the doctrine of what you call radical title. The doctrine of radical title is such that when land is unoccupied and left unattended, it reverts and is owned by the national government. And at the county level, and in this case, Nairobi County, it was open for the county then to give it as a lease or whatever to the occupants. The third issue that is not in question is that there were some 400 to 500 squatters who are former workers of the person named M.J. Samel. This person settled, worked, occupied, and have been in continuous occupation of this property for a continuous period uninterrupted of over 30 years. That is a fact that is also not disputed in the report, Honorable Speaker. But the most important point that I want to raise, Mr. Speaker, is the issue which is the elephant in the house and one of compulsory acquisition. Under Section 8, Mr. Speaker, of the Repealed Land Acquisitions Act, there is a provision and a procedure that must be followed. That procedure, Mr. Speaker, is that compulsory acquisition must be followed by what you call prompt and equal compensation. The compensation must be prompt, and the court fixed these at a sum of Kenya shillings 2 million. Mr. Speaker, there was a purported deposit, and that is in the report, of 3 million by KDF. That receipt and the documentations purported to be the receipts of payment are themselves questionable. And the report has stopped short of saying that these receipts were actually fraudulent. The last point that I wish to make, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of titles. The issue of titles is a thorn and a big question and a big problem in Nairobi, including Mathare constituency. The failure or inability to issue prompt titles causes uncertainty to the landowners, is the key issue behind land disputes, because properties are issued with allotments, over allotments, and allocation to third and fourth parties. And lastly, is a question that people who own land or have allotments are not able to secure loans and facilities with banks. So I support the idea that the titling of these ought to be prompt, having taken into consideration that there never was handing over or passing over of this land. If you look at the records in the Land Ministry of the National Land Commission, this land became unoccupied even 33 years after KDF purports to have paid the compensation. 33 years. So you can see that there is mischief from some shadowy figures hiding behind the purported allocation to KDF, while in real question, it is these companies who want. That is why that 3 million, when you trace it, you will discover it never even came from KDF. It was paid by some shadowy companies. So, Mr. Speaker, we must lift the veil, like we say in law. Lift the veil of the people purporting to want to take this compensation and find that there is Uchumi and other people who are trying to get fraudulent land that should go to TVET.
Very well. My Honorable Majority Leader.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to start by thanking the committee for the patience that they have based on the report as they were being taken through this runaround by the petitioners and others who, everyone using information that they have to their advantage, is then obviously purporting to mislead Parliament to be used to sanitize some irregular allocations on the subject land. And I want to ask members that we avoid emotions on this matter and base it on the facts. Fortunately, I know this land. I was Minister for Lands between 2003 to 2006. And this same matter came to my attention. So beyond the committee, I also know a little more about this matter. Mr. Speaker, I've also received an advisory that has been sent to the Speaker and copied to me from the Honorable Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya as a response to the committee report. And as members debate this matter, emotional as we might get, let us remember that any transaction on this land would have to be based on the law. If it's illegal, it will go nowhere. It matters not what we say, but the transactions would have to be based on the law. And the thrust of the Attorney General's advisory is based obviously on the fact that in the 80s, and the dates are even within the report, the government of Kenya acquired compulsorily from the owner, the last registered owner, Mr. Samuels, using Cap 295, which is now being repealed, acquired this land
for purposes of the Department of Defense. That acquisition process was notified, meetings took place to discuss a compensation, evaluation was done, a check was deposited because obviously the seller of the land basically challenged the value of 3 million. On the challenge, basically, if for purposes of members to understand, the land acquisition as it was then, the government will identify land, then they will issue a notice that we want to acquire this land for this purpose, and call people to go and be told about the compensation. If you didn't agree, first of all, the government will pay you what they have valued, and then you process later through their tribunals or appeals in terms of any enhancements you want. But in the meantime, once the government has deposited the payments on what they think the land is, a notice to take possession is then issued. And that is the finality of the acquisition. In terms of whether you then get paid more or not, that is a cash flow issue.
Majority Leader, what is it, Honorable Ihenya? What is out of order?
Is the majority leader in order, Mr. Speaker, to mislead this House that land will vest in government even if it has not paid for it 30 years after putting a notice of compulsory acquisition?
Okay. So, it's okay, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker, let me get the facts. Let's get the facts right here.
Honorable Duare, there's a point of order already that we are prosecuting with the majority and Honorable
And
Ihenya.
I think, let me just clarify to Honorable Ihenya that indeed, I have copies of the receipts the government paid to the Commission of Lands, the Department of Defense. It's an appropriation. It was paid to the Commission of Lands. The Commissioner of Lands deposited the check in court. In court. The court, because obviously there was a challenge on the amount. The amount was deposited in court. The court then forwarded the money to the advocates for the owner. That the advocates for owner have confirmed they received the money, and it was deposited in their bank.
What is out of order?
So,
Honorable
Mr. Speaker,
Majority Leader, 1 minute.
I don't even know what is in dispute.
Order Majority Leader.
Because facts don't lie.
Order Majority Leader, I think the question between Honorable Ihenya and Honorable Majority Leader is actually a point of fact and a point of law.
Yes, which
is part of the discussion now. Yeah. But Honorable Duare, what is out of order?
Chair, I really want to urge you that we discuss this matter soberly. And you should not entertain the many points of orders of Honorable Lirangu Ihenya. He is a petitioner. He should listen to us. Because everybody who speaks, he wants to have a point of order. So let us listen to the leader of majority. Give each one of all of us who read this report. Then we read, each one of us should read the report and contribute.
Honorable Ihenya, I'm not going to give you a chance, but look, Honorable Duare, Honorable Ihenya has every right to raise a point of order. But also, Honorable Ihenya, we are not also going to allow you to do an interjection at every corner. So let's have that balance.
Okay,
because Honorable Ihenya is also a member here. Honorable Majority, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think the important thing for this House to appreciate is this House passed a law, which was called CAP 295, the Land Acquisition Act. It was in operation then, until it was repealed in 2012 with the amalgamation of lands, the review of the land laws to accord with the new constitution. But that was a law. And that law was used not just for the Roysab land, it was used even to acquire all the lands on all these roads, the bypasses, and all that. And what I want to remind members is in the 90s, there was a phenomenon called the land grabbing mania in this country. And people tried to identify every land that the government had acquired, yet the government had not moved in. And it was purported that it's vacant, it's empty, and it was allocated. It was grabbed, okay? Either by the squatters or using the squatters, or in this case, by Solio Construction, which was then sold it to Uchumi. Uchumi is now trying to sell it to somebody else. But all that is irrelevant because the issue is, was the land alienated or unalienated? And at 1986, when the notice of taking possession was issued and filed within the file, the land became alienated to the Kenya government, which means it was not available for allocation to any other person without the concurrence of DOD. There's a principle in law, I believe the professor will tell us, namo dat quod non habet. You cannot give what you do not have. You cannot give what you do not have. Once the land was sealed, that this land belongs
so agitated
to KDF, that was it.
Member for Kikuyu, why are you too agitated? What is out of order?
Mr. Aziz gets his act together.
No.
Mr. Speaker.
Order of majority, he is on the floor. He is on the floor. He is trying to get the mic.
You know,
what is out of order,
Honorable Speaker, thank you. You know, the leader of majority doesn't realize that I am not the one who gives myself the mic. You have to do it from the clerk's desk. But he's doing a good job trying to enumerate what happened, Honorable Speaker. But I just wanted to benefit, because if you read through the committee's report, Honorable Speaker, you'll notice, and he's gone to great length to explain how money was paid out. But you notice the original owner, this Mr. Summers, after his death, even his children were deported from this country, Honorable Speaker.
No.
We may want to benefit from the knowledge to know who are these who are so powerful to instigate the deportation of the sons of this Mr. Summers and occasion allocation of this land to companies, this Solio company, Honorable Speaker. I would also want the leader of majority to tell us who are the owners of this Solio.
Order, Honorable Kimani. You know, Honorable Kimani Shongwa, you know, you are also being a bit mischievous. You are now going to a point of debate. Well, I'm sure the majority leader has noted. But please, majority leader, if you could proceed.
Mr. Speaker, No. I need extra. Mr. Speaker, I think the other issue I would like to share with this House is that following the tabling of this report or the conclusion of this report, if I could be protected from...
Honorable Kimani, how comes you left your seat and walked all over? Let's have majority leader have the time and the space.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, the facts I want to lay before this House is that following the conclusion of the report by the committee, the Honorable Waihenya did write to the Attorney General and sought the opinion of the Attorney General. And the Attorney General has responded to the Honorable Waihenya on all the matters, and the conclusion was basically that that land is not available because it is alienated to Kenya Defense Forces. So even any grand plans to invest public money by World Bank, by whoever, money cannot be, public funds cannot be invested in land that is irregularly allocated. So let's remove the emotions about the TVETs and about all that, because the Attorney General advised that they look for land elsewhere because that land is not available. And that communication is here. Mr. Speaker, the other thing we want to ask ourselves, do we want Parliament to be used by the alleged workers, former workers? If you must remember that we are talking of land that was acquired in the 80s. So these people who are alleging to be former workers were even minors And the report even says that. Were minors and health could not have been working, right? Some of them were not even born, but they are now registered as owners of that land. Mr. Speaker, the other thing I just want to mention is that despite the many claimants, and there are many, from the principle, nemo dat quod non habet, you cannot give what you do not have until the title has changed from Department of Defense. Neither the county government, nor the national government, nor Uchumi, nor all those claimants can claim title to that land. That land belongs.
Very well. Very well. Honorable Majority Leader, I had given you 2 minutes, and your 2 minutes are gone. Honorable Majority Leader, you want to table? Do you want to table something? For purposes of just mentioning that, Majority Leader, so that we are fair to members. You know you have 10 minutes, and you have taken your 10 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, for the benefit of this House and generations to come in this House, I would like to table the advisory from the Attorney General, which contains a full history of this land and all the documentation on the same.
Very well, very well, very well. What is the point of procedure? What point of procedure?
Procedure. Honorable Speaker, a committee report which has been tabled and is under debate, you cannot introduce new evidence. You cannot. You cannot. I have been here for too long. As Honorable Kimunya, that document is not admissible. Contrary, this advisory opinion should have been submitted to the committee. It's not part of the record. It's a foreign document, and because we don't have a copy of it.
Okay. So, Majority, Honorable Dware, I will speak to that in a minute. But Honorable Tiende Omoro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to contribute to this motion, this report, and I've looked at it carefully. Mr. Speaker, on the face of it, this report presents another very delicate question. The question of land for public purposes, that is for the KDF use, versus the question of private interests in land that are vested. And while that's what's on the face of it, it does appear that there's more that is not on the face of it and does not come out clearly in the report, other than by latent inference. And that is the question, as Honorable Waihenya has mentioned and others, that it does appear that there are others who are interested in this land other than KDF. Unfortunately, that does not come out very clearly in the report, I must say. Now, on the face of it, first, this was 100 years lease that expired in the year 2003. And what this means is that when it expired in 2003, it reverted. There's a principle of reversion. And the only question will be, does it revert to the county government or does it revert to the national government? County government. Because in 2003, there was no county government. At that time, there was the County Council of Nairobi, which was within the ministry, the city council. It means by law, at that time, it reverted to the national government. Let's be very clear before we go on how we are debating on this. In addition to that, the only question then is, when the new constitution comes into place in 2010, anything that had reverted through the city council, can it now be reclaimed by the county council? It may be the county government. It may be very difficult. However, what is important for purposes of the Constitution is that even if it reverted now to the county government or to the national government, by application of Article 62, neither of them would be able to administer it. It can only be administered by the National Land Commission. To that extent, the part of the report that finds that the county government had gone ahead and started the process of allocating the land, that process was wrong. Having said that, though, we must agree that once that land reverted, there can be no question of compulsory acquisition, because you only compulsorily acquire what is held by somebody. You do not compulsorily acquire what has reverted to the national government. But does that mean, Mr. Speaker, that those who find themselves in this land over these decades can be disregarded? The answer again is no. Because Article 40, Sub-Article 4 is very clear that those who have found themselves occupying land in good faith, even without title, are entitled to compensation. Yes. And so we must be very analytical in this. But does it mean then that because they find themselves in that land, then it means that they are entitled to that land? Mr. Speaker, this is where we need to analyze very carefully. I have read the observations of the committee. I have read the conclusions, the 3 conclusions. I have no problem with conclusion number 3. I have no problem with conclusion number 2. But we must interrogate conclusion number 1 a little more carefully. And that is in this manner, Mr. Speaker. If indeed it is true that the KDF genuinely want this land for its purposes, then any parliamentary report must respect the Constitution, must say if it is to go to KDF, then it must have the injunction that it cannot go to any other individual for any other purpose. It must be restricted to the public purpose. But if that is so, then those who occupy this land should be entitled to some compensation on the face of it. Even if we are to go by the court documents as presented by the Leader of Majority, the court recommended compensation of 23 million. The report says those who occupy the land are at least around 400 families, 400 individuals. Even if we were to take the 23 million and distribute it, that would mean that each family is entitled to 57,500 at the bare minimum. That is if you go that direction. But if, after examining this, it does appear that KDF is itself a front,
Very well. I know, Adan Duale, you are a ranking member, but let me start from there. We'll get a chance. Let me start from that far end, Honorable Mwadime. Honorable Mwadime, you get chances. Jeda, you shall get a chance as well. Even.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika kwa hii nafasi umenipa. Mwanzo kabisa Mheshimiwa Spika, naunga mkono kamati ya ardhi. Manake ripoti yao nimeisoma kwa uangalifu, kwa undani kabisa. Kwa kweli hata mpita njia akiangalia, akisoma hii ripoti, utaona kabisa kuna ulaghai mwingi sana ambao ulikuwa unaendelea, lakini kamati ya ardhi imefanya kazi nzuri. Watu wa Roysambo wanaumizwa tu. Hata Mheshimiwa Spika, ukiangalia tu kwa sura, utaona kwamba yule mzungu Bwana Samuel alipofariki na alikuwa anaendelea shughuli vizuri kabisa na wananchi wa kule Roysambo, alikuwa anawalipa vizuri, lakini bahati mbaya alipofariki tena akatoa maagizo kwamba waendelee kukaa pale na jaribu kujizatiti angalau wapate mlo wa siku. Na baada ya wale ndugu zake kuregea, bahati mbaya wakafurushwa, sijui ni nani ambaye alifanya namna hiyo. So Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa ule kweli hata wale watu ambao kule ndani wapatio title deed zao, shule zipatio title deed zao, kila kitu. Na kwa kweli huu ni mfano mmoja tu. Mali kwengi sana Kenya imefanyika kama hivi. Kama hivi sasa vile tunavyoongea kule kwetu Taita Taveta. Hoja tuna maranchi mazuri mazuri. Watu wanakodolea macho, wengine wanamezea mate. Sasa hivi kuna simba mla nyama kwa jina la KDF. Wanazunguka huko wakitaka ati wapatiwe mahali pa kufanyia mazoezi. Lakini hao ni watu binafsi. So Mheshimiwa Spika, masuala kama haya yafaa tuyakemee, tuyaongee waziwazi, tusaidie wananchi. Ndio wale simba mla nyama anajifichia kwa sijui ni KDF ama nani, atakuwa na aibu ya kufanya jambo kama hili. Mheshimiwa Spika, asante, nimechangia, acha nipatie wenzangu fursa pia waendelee. Asante sana.
Before I get to my left, let me give Honorable Adan Duale. But before then, there was an issue of Honorable Majority Leader. Honorable Majority Leader did, Honorable Majority Leader, I'm speaking to your earlier issue. You did support a response from the Attorney General. The position is this: you cannot introduce anything new to a committee that has already concluded. There was a chance to do that when the committee was proceeding. Having said that, any member who wants to produce anything to support their argument, as long as it is admissible, it is okay, but only to the extent of supporting the argument, but shall not in any way be part of the report of the committee, because that is already concluded and closed. That introduction of any document would have been done at the committee level. So that's the position. Honorable
Speaker, this was a petition.
Adan Duale, what is your point of order, Honorable Macau?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On furtherance to what members have alluded to, on the leader of majority, introducing new evidence when the committee has done its work. Mr. Speaker, that 2010, it is, Mr. Speaker, allow me just a minute. I want to say something.
What?
That 2010, Mr. Speaker, the leader of majority was the Minister of Lands then. And you remember the infamous Syokimau demolition of 2010, Mr. Speaker.
Macau.
He said a title deed is like a tissue paper.
Macau. You look. Order Macau. I know you. Order Macau. The issue you have raised, I have already ruled and settled. And it is in line of what you are saying. So please don't bring it again. I know you want to, when you get a chance to speak on that point when the majority leader was once a minister. That you can speak. But on the issue of whether you can introduce, that is settled and it is done. Very well. Honorable Duale.
Mr. Speaker, I first want to bring to the House, and Mr. Speaker, I want members to listen because I read this report. I want members to know that what is before us was a petition. And we must start with what were the prayers of the petitioners. Mr. Speaker, the prayers of the petitioners, if I can highlight to allow me, the first one was, is it possible? And I'm trying to put the petitioners' prayers in line with Article 119 of the Constitution that allows Parliament to receive petitions, but to act within its authority. The petition that we receive in this House must be in compliance with the powers given to us by the Constitution. So what was the first prayer of the petitioners? It was, is it possible for this House to uphold the petitioners' right to occupy, reside, and do business and own LR number 5875/2? In my honest opinion, this House doesn't have that powers. So the answer is no. Prayer number 2 was, is it within the authority of this House to expedite the issuance of subtitles, leases for the approval of letters of allotment issued to members of Roisa Community Development Society? In my opinion, as a House, the answer is no. The third prayer was, is it possible for this House to preserve title deeds issued for public purpose? The answer, in line with Article 119, is no. This House doesn't have those powers. The fourth prayer was, is it within the authority of this House to order compensation for the demolition of the petitioner's premises? Mr. Speaker, the answer is no. Mr. Speaker, all these prayers falls within the purview of the court of law, which in answering petitioner's prayer could have issued, number one, an honorable legal lawyers are in this House, could have issued what we call dilatory orders on the right of the petitioners to occupy land. The court could have issued what they call in law mandamus order to ensure issues of title. The court could have issued conservatory orders to preserve the title deeds earlier issued. The court could have ordered damages for any person who may have occasioned loss of demolition. That is in line with Article 165 of the Constitution that establishes the High Court. So in line with Article 119, Mr. Speaker, the prayer sought by these petitioners, this House cannot make a determination. So as Honorable Otieno Amolo says, I have no problem with recommendation 2 and 3, but recommendation 1 is not implementable, Mr. Speaker. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, this committee, the committee did not tell us anything who are the owners of Solai Construction. Solio, who are the owners? And they are known. They are known. They have not told us, and records are there. Who deported the sons? Who deported the sons of Mr. Samuel? Mr. Samuel, the white man, when he died, his 2 sons were deported. There must be a deportation order attached to this report. There must be a deportation order, which Minister for State for Internal Security then signed. We must be told why were they deported, the reasons behind it, which plane carried them. Mr. Speaker, all these, if you look at it, the whole thing is a spider web. It's a spider web. Honorable Speaker, protect me from the member for Kikuyu. First, he should go and deal with the conflict between Kajiado and his constituency. You know, he should not be here. He's my good friend. Mr. Speaker, the right audience should have been the court and not the House. We should not be seen as encroaching on the jurisdiction of the courts. We should not be seen as confirming ourselves authority or powers that the Constitution did not confer on us. Let us not behave like the Senate last night. Let us not behave like the Senate, where the Speaker of the Senate, who have no powers, violated the calendar of his own House and said the House has adjourned. So, Speaker, I want you to give me a few minutes. So, Speaker, what is also rather very obvious from this report is that the petitioner is one convoluted and intertwined spider. There is Solio Construction. There is something Mall. Then there is Uchumi.
Honorable, you know, I have refused very many point of order. I have refused very many of them.
I want to inform the former majority leader, Mr. Speaker,
what is out of order, Honorable?
That the simple problem here is the people who are grabbing this parcel of land through KDF is Ushumi Supermarket, through a subsidiary called Kasarani Mall, which was incorporated, Mr. Speaker, the company that is said to have been allocated this parcel of land, Mr. Speaker, was incorporated 3 months after the allotment.
Honorable, you know, I have been kind to give you a chance, but you know, you are giving him some information. It is actually a point of information to him. You didn't ask whether he needed it. But nevertheless, I'm sure he has heard, assuming it is correct. Yes, give Honorable Dware 1 minute to conclude his.
No, give me 2 minutes. Mr. Speaker, what do I say so? From the report of the committee, and I have a lot of respect for Honorable Rachel Nyamaya, is one of the chairs I respect. From the report, the owner of the land in question died, his 2 sons were deported, the lease under which he owned the land was allowed to expire, and upon expiry, a reversal to the county government of Nairobi was done. The land was cleverly allocated to the workers who used to work in the farm. Nothing can be as clear as that. It is pure fraud, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, my final question is this. Today, the land in question is currently under the occupation of Kenya Defense Forces. Even if we were to argue that the public interest grounds stands as a House, if the public interest grounds, Mr. Speaker, stands, why could anyone want to evict Kenya Defense Forces? Let me even, yes, why do you want to evict Kenya Defense Forces? These are the people who protect our country. Why do you want to evict them? And Mr. Speaker, does this House have the powers of the High Court to give orders to evict KDF? So, Speaker, as I rest my case, it is notable that the declaration of right of property or determination of ownership of land can only be declared by the High Court and not a committee of this House. To this end, the recommendation of the committee cannot stand, and it should be tantamount to clothing the committee with the jurisdiction of the High Court under Article 165 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, the last paragraph, and for this reason, Mr. Speaker, for this reason, I really want, in fact, I was for the idea that this report should be deferred, this committee should go back, they should tell us who are the owners of Solai, who are the owners of Solai, who are the owners of Solai, they should tell us who deported. Mr. Speaker, otherwise I oppose that this House must live within.
Let's get to my left now, Honorable Bui. I'll come back this way. I will certainly come this way, so be patient. Honorable Bui.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker,
you know, there seems to be quite a lot of points of order on this one.
Mr. Speaker, a lot of the points of order we've had are actually points of argument.
Yeah, and
maybe we could extend our debate, then they can all get opportunity.
Honorable Okello, what is your point of order? And it shall not be a point of argument.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you. We are all aware, Mr. Speaker, that land matters coming under discussion in a House such as this will inevitably invite emotions. And the points that I want to bring to you, Mr. Speaker, are only two. Number one is that even in a court of law, and we are privileged that you are a lawyer, Mr. Speaker, there are cases that are varied.
Honorable Okello, I can tell you are line of Honorable. You shall get a point of an opportunity to speak to this, Honorable Okello. Honorable Bui.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, you can tell the emotions, because even the member is still continuing. Mr. Speaker, my contribution on this report is as follows. First and foremost, Mr. Speaker, we must understand that we are a capitalist nation. And in economics, you know that land is one of the three factors of production. That means that we must be careful, extremely careful, how we handle matters of land. Whether it is the land disputes between individuals, between businesses, even between individuals and the government. It's important that we handle them very, very soberly, as a former majority leader has stated. Mr. Speaker, you see, after we promulgated the new constitution in 2010, we came up with a National Land Commission that is meant to deal with issues land, including those historical injustices. And even a land court was created, Mr. Speaker, so that issues to do with land can be addressed properly. Mr. Speaker, when you listen to you read the report of the committee, surely it's like a work of fiction, Mr. Speaker. Because here we have a situation where the registrar, who seems to have, whose signature is on the records, claims that they didn't sign. We have reports to do with companies allocated land even before the expiry of the lease. In fact, 3 years before the expiry of the lease, we have situations where we have companies that are being given land even before they are formed. Mr. Speaker, generally it looks like there is quite a lot of, and then there's several owners. Here we are talking about an owner called, I think, Soloi Farm, there is Uchumi, there is Kasarani Mall, there is KDF, and there's even the argument from the workers that they are owners of this land. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it's important that when listening to the people that have spoken before me, I think it is important, first and foremost, to address the recommendations of the committee. Where they say that the DCI should investigate, I think that is in order. It is important that the DCI investigates, especially the people and the workers of the Ministry of Lands, so that we make sure that if there's anyone who acted contrary to the law, that they are addressed. Again, Mr. Speaker, it's important to protect the lives and livelihoods of Kenyans, because that also gives confidence to people who want to invest in this country. We improve the image of the nation when people know that people's properties can actually be taken care of. But if possible, I wish to recommend that the committee also looks at the issues to do with the legality that have been raised by Honorable Amolo Otiende. Because clearly, the issue of who really owns this land, if it has expired the list that was given to these gentlemen expired. Then how can it be that even up to now, they are still arguing about that ownership that has already expired? So I think it's important that we deal with the issue of that legality. And finally, Mr. Speaker, it is the issue of KDF. The report is about KDF invasion of private land. But when we discuss this, we are talking about other players. We are talking about other businesses. We are talking about other individuals. What is KDF's stake? That is what I would like to hear. Has KDF invaded? Have they demolished? Have they kicked out people? Or is KDF being used as a scapegoat? I would like to propose that, as the former majority leader has stated, that the committee does further investigation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Jaldesa. Honorable Jaldesa, you have the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to request the mover to reply.
Order members. Order members. Order members. Say that, Honorable Jaldesa, what is the... What? Honorable Jaldesa, you are the next on my list here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the adoption of report by the committee. Mr. Speaker, sometime September last year, I brought a similar petition on behalf of the people of Burat Ward of Isiolo County. Mr. Speaker, to date, I have not been given a conclusive report because KDF has become a cartel in this house, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm saying this because when I listen to some of the members defending KDF, Mr. Speaker, you can see the pattern. Mr. Speaker, having said that, I attended all the sitting when the committee was interrogating different stakeholders, Mr. Speaker. I was in the committee meeting when the acting CEO of National Land Commission, Mr. Speaker, came to give her views regarding this issue, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was in the House.
Order, Jaldesa, what is your point of, what is, Honorable Sankok, whom do you want to inform? Honorable Jaldesa, would you be kind enough to receive the information?
Mr. Speaker, I was in the committee meeting when the Ministry of Land came to...
Order, Honorable Sankok is seeking to give you some information. Are you okay to receive that information?
I am not okay, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed then.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I was in the committee meeting when the Ministry of Land came to give their views, Mr. Speaker, regarding this land. And it is very unfair when the former majority leader and others are misleading this house. Mr. Speaker, clearly they were able to show that the workers of Mr. Jacob occupied that land even after the so-called lease has expired, Mr. Speaker. And the communication is very clear in the report. Mr. Speaker, KDF.
Let Honorable Jaldesa conclude.
Mr. Speaker, KDF invaded and forcefully acquired this land, Mr. Speaker, and Section 8 of the Land Acquisition Act 295, that is now repealed, required where there is a compulsory acquisition, the owners must be compensated, and this has not been done. Mr. Speaker, one thing is very clear. KDF have become the biggest land grabbers in this country, Mr. Speaker. In the county of Isiolo, where I represent, Mr. Speaker, we have 4 camps, and each camp is occupying over 2,000.
Honorable Jaldesa, there is a point of order by the majority that we can't really dismiss.
Yes.
A member who is insisting on a point of order.
Honorable Speaker, I think we are debating a report of the committee. Is the Honorable Jaldesa in order to mislead this House, that the report says that no payment was made, while paragraph 67 of the report notes that payment was made and acknowledged by Jacob's advocates in 1987. And it's in the report of the committee, paragraph 67. But the member is purporting that there was no payment that was made, yet the committee itself has actually recognized that payment was made at paragraph 67.
Very well, Majority Leader. I'm sure
Mr. Speaker, with all the due respect, Mr. Speaker, I think the Majority Leader is misleading the House because clearly nowhere in the report is indicated that payment was made to one Jacob, Mr. Speaker. And that is very clear in the report. Mr. Speaker, please allow me one more time because I was interrupted. Mr. Speaker, I want to say justice anywhere is injustice. Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. What is happening to the people?
Very well. What is out on a majority leader? What on Honorable Adan Duale, what is out of order so that then we can make. Honorable Duale, give me.
Mr. Speaker, I think for Hansard record, as an august house, I think for Hansard record, I will ask you to order that that KDF is a cartel be expunged from the records. Kenya Defense Forces, in line with Article 241-42, cannot be curtailed. I have no problem, but I think you can order the Speaker that we cannot refer to the Kenyan Defense Forces as a cartel. I think that cannot go in record.
Did the members actually say that?
Yeah, Honorable Rahema, a person I respect a lot, said it should be expunged.
If that was actually said, it cannot be. A member could have issues with KDF, but KDF cannot be a cartel. It is not possible. Honorable members, honorable members, I do appreciate that members really wanted to speak to this, and I know it is a very important item. But honorable members, I would have loved to have more members speak to this. But as you can tell, it is 1. It is 1 p.m. I cannot put the question now after this one. But the good news is that this will still find its way back to the order paper, and members will have opportunity to speak to it. Honorable members, the time being 1 p.m. This House starts adjourned until Wednesday, 12 August 2020 at 2:30 p.m.